All right, James. We're gonna talk about Tamerlane, Timur the Lame, Timur Lenk. I remember, like I said, I had mentioned I never heard of this guy when I was younger. You never hear about him in school. I had found out about him through my own research in the library in my early 20s and was fascinated that such a character who had such an influence on both, all the way from Ming Dynasty China to Europe and everywhere in between, which is to say Eurasia, right, the largest landmass on the planet. This man had a huge influence, a lot of millions and millions of death, right, or deaths or whatever, New Delhi, all that. But I had never heard of this guy, and this guy really was like I said, he was used he was still known years later. He was included in dramas, right, like Poe's first poem, printed, Tamerlane. Tamerlane was a poem by Christopher Marlowe, right, in the Jacobean or the Elizabethan theater. There was even a hippo drama by the guy that wrote The Monk, Matthew Lewis. A hippo drama starring horses, based on Tamerlane. So essentially, in terms of what is Tamerlane? What were his accomplishments, his conquests?
I did a series of articles on the deadliest conquerors, and they had to be. This was a combination of conquering and killing with their own hand. I think the guy that wins it is Hernan
De
Soto, just because this is a dude that killed thousands of people with his own hands and wiped out millions of people.
Right.
Okay. Now, Genghis Khan is the only human that we know of in the era of muscle power warfare that supervised the killing of more people than Tamerlane. He did not conquer as much territory. It was more, Tamerlane conquered more territory. Genghis killed more people, but you could argue there weren't as many people left to kill when Genghis was, a couple hundred years after Genghis Khan. There was no blood relation. Okay, we should do a part 2 for ethnicity,
we'll do
religiosity, and stuff. Okay, but his great enemies that he vanquished started out with dealing just handfuls of guys. He started out with 5 guys. He started out dealing with bandits. He began making himself useful to petty warlords. Some of these men he would come back to in later years and demand their submission to him.
He was from Samarkand, like Uzbekistan, modern day Uzbekistan.
He was from that area. He was a rustic son of a rural hetman who would have to go into Samarkand every once in a while. Whenever the Mongols came in, you had to go and you had to pay them tribute. They were not Mongols, so only the Mongols could rule and exact tribute.
That's right.
And then you'd have the Persians, the Arabs, the Indians, and the Chinese all taking advantage of these people as well. And they were living under the Mongol yoke. They're second string Mongols, okay? And one thing that Lamb notes in his novel is that Timur is the only Tartar that anybody knows that can do this, that can do what military history geeks like me are taught, that every Turk, every Tartar, every Mongol was able to take his thumb ring and pull it all the way back here, just like an English longbowman while he was sitting on a horse.
Yeah, come on.
Apparently, Timur was the only person other than one other warrior who was a giant that could do that.
I believe.
Okay, out of all the people that they knew. So this was a potential if you were Superman, but most dudes were like right here.
Yeah.
Okay, it was like me trying to shoot Rick's
Well, you don't even need power when you're fighting the horses and you're doing that kind of combat. You don't even need a lot of power because you're using the arrows not to finish off your opponents. You're trying to wear them down.
When he was in his early 20s, he gets an arrow through the heel, which makes him lame for life. So the name Tamerlane or Tamerlane or Timur the Lane, these were all insults by his enemies. His name was Timur, which just means iron. That was his name.
The man of iron.
Okay, so it was a man named Iron. He had a very beautiful and loyal young wife that was his age, that he was in love with. After she died, because she went through a lot of things with him, she spent like 5 years wandering in the desert with him. Things were so treacherous in Central Asia that since he was a straight shooter, he was a guy that said, I'm going to go fight those 20 guys by myself and watch me. People trusted that. A lot of petty guys needed a guy like that because they couldn't trust their own people.
No.
So he kept this thing going even after he got his heel shot through. And even after that happened, he went and took a mountain pass by himself. Like all the guys he sent up there got wiped out. He just went up there and he got to the top and he did a lot of Nathan Bedford style stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on, boys, come on. And it's just him, right? But the guys on the other side, they're looking for a way out and he's giving them a way out. So he was master of psychological operations. He's regarded in retrospect as this great butcher because there were two intractable enemies that would not surrender to him. There were the Hashishans, who were the guys that would send an assassin to you, okay, that had been brainwashed. And then there was this prick merchant prince in Baghdad. They kept on sneaking out of town and everything. Eventually, he nabs him, and he ends up wiping out the whole place. The Mongols had previously done this to the wards of Baghdad.
Yeah, Baghdad got fucked again.
When he first took Baghdad, he did it by riding in with 300 men. The gate got shut behind him.
Right.
And his generals couldn't believe he did it because they knew if they lost him, they lost the whole brain. Everything went kaput because he never held a council of war because it's near Asia. Right. It's total treachery.
Yeah.
So he played chess with himself all night long. There was a legend that he played. I even wrote an article called "Playing Chess with Tamerlane." Like, what would it be like to be his human footstool?
You said it was 2D chess,
right? And then have to be his human footstool so his lame ass could get on his horse, and then have to stay up at night and lose to him in chess. Apparently, he was, according to legend, he inflicted this upon Bayezid, the Sultan of the Ottoman Turks.
Yeah, I remember that story.
But when he captured him, according to Lamb, he felt sorry for him because, one, he was a drug addict. So he was no competition in chess.
Right.
And he had been, a lot of his men had gone over to Timur because he was the better leader and they're always looking for the better guy.
Yeah.
So he was well aware that he got a lot of his help through treachery, so he never confided his plans in anyone. You came to him after he spent up all night playing double square chess with himself, and then one by one he told his generals, you go here, you do this, you go here, you do this. And he was always in reserve to come in and make the difference, and he lost 2 of his sons in battle, okay, which really hurt him. One of his sons he condemned to death for drunkenness, and he actually let him off and he didn't have him killed when people pled for his life. Now, once his wife died when he was away on campaign, he would spend most of every year away on campaign. He'd come back to his wife. One time he comes back and she's not there. He ended up marrying the wife of one of the kings that he conquered, and he respected her and he put her in charge of Samarkand and the whole royal palace. She was the boss bitch of this whole thing. No. Everybody had to respect her because he was away 10 months out of the year. And even when he became an old man, he started campaigning in the winter during the snows, which was unheard of.
Yeah.
So his whole goal was to find a way to keep the Mongols from coming in and putting the foot on the neck every few years and everybody else from ripping you off.
Right.
And he's got this central position. They're weak. This is like West Virginia, like the head hillbilly in West Virginia. It's like Daddy McCoy trying to figure out how he's going to kill Hatfield and then play Lincoln and Lee off against each other, and Jefferson Davis off against each other until he can conquer the Union and the Confederacy, only protect West Virginia.
Right.
That's what, so Timur's goal was to protect the area around Samarkand. So he did concentric conquest. He started out serving as a mercenary, helping different people out. And then when the Mongols came in, he volunteered to serve the Mongol, the head Mongol. And eventually he played off. These Mongols were always very treacherous with each other. He made himself more reliable to the head Mongol than the Mongol subordinates were. So some of those guys didn't fare too well, but he didn't do it treacherously. He was just more reliable to the head Mongol than the lower Mongols were. And eventually he turns on his master and he tells him, remember who I am. Okay, that I'm the will that can't be broken, and I'm the one man that is smarter than you.
Oh,
Okay, and that's it. And he used this on everybody. When he was a 60-year-old man, he went up to a capital city underneath their guns and their catapults and their arrows, and he challenged the king to a duel. And the guys on the walls didn't kill him because they all admired him. And eventually they throw the king out to him. That's what kind of guy he was. He was a total stud.
And like what? So what? Like just like what geographic places? Like what cities did he conquer? What people did he beat? Just a little sum up.
Okay, so first he has to take care of the Turkomans that come out of the deserts.
Yeah, the Turkomans.
West. Then he has to take care of the different hybrid groups to his south. Then he comes to the attention of the Mongols. Then he has to make himself valuable to the Mongol. He defeats the Mongols largely through a force of will and their own sloth. They started to become
they were starting decadent. Yeah, they were dividing up.
He goes down into India. He spends years down into India.
Yeah,
he comes back with elephants.
Yeah.
He spent a lot more time than he wanted to in Persia. He had some sympathy for the Persians. When he's campaigning in Persia, there is this gigantic oaf that's basically, I think, the basis for Robert E. Howard's Conan character, who has to have a special bow built for him. Horses can't carry him too far. You know, he leads a bunch of villagers against 40 Persians, and the villagers all run away, and the 40 Persians run away from him. Okay? And then when Timur decides that the Hashishans have to go, they're the terrorists of the ancient or the late medieval, early modern Middle East. He goes in and he reduces their citadels one by one, and the guy that takes the tower of the capital of Alamut is this giant guy. So he's done two great military feats. Timur immediately pulls him out of the front lines. This guy was a nut. He's going to get killed. And he makes him a general, even though he's a ding-dong. He's a dummy. Okay, but Timur is going to put him in reserve. And when you need a bulldozer, that's the guy. So he would recognize talent. All of his captains and generals would compete for his attention. And then he would compete to get the hardest mission. They were always competing in front of him as he sat on the hill. And they always knew that he was willing to come down even when he became an old man and do it. He even adopted a Mongol of the Golden Horde, a prince who was during the time of Alexander Nevsky. Okay, During that time, he even adopts this young fella, and the guy betrays him and declares war on some of Timur's vassals, even after he propped this guy up in exile and everything. And he says, "Do you remember who I am? I hope you have not forgotten who I am." And he came for that guy, and the guy surrendered to him, and so on. Eventually, another Timur, like a nephew that Timur gave the Ukrainian area to, ends up being attacked by the whole shebang. The Mongols of the Golden Horde, the Teutonic Knights, the Polish king, all the idiots in Eastern Europe all attack this guy. And he's just learned at the knee of the real Timur. He's like the knockoff, and he just wipes them all out. So the Europeans, the Eastern Europeans, actually thought they got wiped out by Timur, the guy. But no, they got wiped out by his nephew. Now, he wiped out the Ottoman Turks just in time to save Constantinople. And then he went to the pricks, the Knights of St. John, who inherited the Crusades after the Templars got done in by the French king and the bankers back in Western Europe. And it came to a certain point, I'd really like to get back to my capital. So do not make me reduce the citadel. Surrender to me, and I'll give you good terms. So they held out another 50 years against one of the greatest Ottoman Turks.
Well, so that's the thing with Timur. In terms of like some of the Eastern Europeans got roughed up a little bit, but essentially for most of Western Europe and Southern Europe that was dealing with Muslim problems, he actually took a lot of heat off them because he did the Ottoman Turks, and he sent them back like a century.
Oh, that's why the king of Castile sends a man. I think his name was Diego.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. I forgot that. Right.
We'll cover that like in the
Okay.
next thing on his identity.
Right.
But Timur was the best archer of the Tartars,
All right.
and nobody would face him with a sword.
There you go.
Okay.